Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and The Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we are live out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena because the Predators are back in action tonight. 2 home games at Bridgestone Arena for the Predators this week. Hosting the Dallas Stars. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. We'll have your pregame coverage starting at 6 p.m. on 1025 and 1063 The Game. ESPN game tonight, so we get Willy Donick all show long. D-Mase is here as well. Damn.
I'm gonna watch the game. No, it's not that. I'm gonna watch the game tonight, but I'm gonna put it on mute. Because you and May saying, y'all like calling the game. And then
we're just going to put Willy on speakerphone.
Exactly.
So he can call the game for us.
Because they always seem like when the national people come in, it's always, at least to me, it seems as if they are pro the other team and not Nashville, where they should just be, down the middle. I hate that. That's why.
Well, I will say this. They have a good announcing team tonight. Mike Monaco, who does some SEC stuff, does a lot of college baseball. Very good all-around announcer, young, kind of an up-and-comer. And then A.J. Malesko, a good friend of ours, who's come on our show many times. She will be the sidekick tonight. So I feel like we're in good hands. I feel like we're in good hands tonight.
Yeah, well, we need.
And, of course, Hal Gill is going to, give her all of the insights of the Predators. Because those two go way back. They're both from the Boston area. They trained together for a long time, going a long time. AJ, gold medalist, Olympian back in the day out of Harvard. So she's turned into a really, really good announcer. So they'll be fine. Yeah. So I'm a spectator tonight, and it's so weird for me when these happen.
Are you going to be ushering? Are you going to be like?
I almost wish they would give me a job like that because it takes my mind off the game.
Behind the concession stand,
because
serve some hot dogs.
What ends up happening is if I'm just watching the game, I become like I do when I'm watching one of my kids play. Like every play, I'm like, oh.
You have to sit on your hands a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I want to start pacing up and down. It's crazy.
It should be a great game tonight. The Dallas Stars are a very good team that the Predators always seem to play very physical. We'll chat with Elliot Friedman at 1 p.m. for our weekly visit with him. So we will talk all things trade deadline.
Yeah.
A lot of Saros news. We heard from Barry Trotz on Jared's show earlier this week. So that he had the conversation with UC Saros. So it'll be interesting to throw at Elliot Friedman.
Really insightful stuff from Barry Trotz. I'm sure that made its way to Elliot's ears somewhere for sure. And this morning, Columbus fired their general manager, Jarmo Kekalainen. So it's a major move in what's happening with Columbus. They're ones that have been struggling now for a good while. So they made a big change this morning.
One of my favorite names to say is Jarmo Kekalainen.
Yeah.
It's one that just rolls off the tongue.
He's been there for 11 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, if you don't know how to say his name after 11 years, something wrong.
Yeah. So now you got to learn another name. I don't know what they're going to do.
So we'll catch up with Elliot Friedman at 1 p.m. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, I just want to send our best to the families that are suffering from the horrendous tragedy yesterday at the Super Bowl parade in Kansas City. So 1 died, 21 in the hospital. There was a shooting yesterday at the Super Bowl parade. It's not a political issue. It's a humanitarian issue at this point. So we're sending our best to those in Kansas City because I know they've been suffering.
That's just unfortunate. And it's getting to a point where you don't want to get immune to it. But when you see it, it's just like, you say a prayer, you give your condolences, and then it's like the world just moves on to the next thing. But that's just unfortunate. That's why people have a real problem with being around crowds because you just don't know. And it seems like people are getting more and more reckless, and people are willing to, sacrifice lives for whatever reason. And the one lady they end up getting killed, the female getting
a radio host.
Yeah, she was a radio host in Kansas City. So it's like people are just there to enjoy, have fun, talk about what's going on. And, at the end of it all, or as it's going on, someone chooses to, for whatever reason, chooses to cause mass hysteria and bloodshed everywhere. So it's awful. It truly is awful.
I thought about this, D-Mase. You remember, I mean, there was a parade when you guys went to the Super Bowl. There was a parade. There was I don't know I don't think it was as many people as were there in Kansas City, but I take myself back to that. The Predators elected not to have a parade. They could have. They said, it's a choice you have when you go to the Super Bowl, go to the Stanley Cup Final. It's an unbelievable season, but there was a big celebration, and I was out there. I just think about, what if? Like, it's the way that we keep going, and we had it in our community last year, right? It's you just start thinking that this is the bad place to think. Like, when they first started happening, it's like, well, that can't happen again like that. But now we're to the point where we know it's going to happen again, and where is it going to be next? Yeah. And that's sad. I hate that we have that. And I know that we can't snap our fingers and make some law that's going to completely stop the chances of this happening again. But are there some baby steps that we can take? That's the thing that frustrates me is let's just take some baby steps to try to lower the chances that this happens as often. But that's just, for a celebration of so many people coming together, everybody's feeling good. You've won a championship, all kinds of different backgrounds, different people coming together, and that happens. Oh, it's just crushing.
And we fully understand how unnatural and kind of gross it feels to continue to do what we do every single day when there was a tragedy that happened, celebrating the very sport that we talk about every single day, the sport that we know and that we love very much. But that is what we're here for. We are a sports talk show, so we'll continue to deliver what we do every day. We continue about our everyday lives, but just know that we're doing it with a heavy heart, and we're doing it with all of our love and thoughts and prayers out to the Kansas City community. I want to start here. Because there's a whole lot of talk on the market of a position group that the Titans need a whole lot of help at, and that's at wide receiver. And the Titans need a whole lot of help at a lot of different positions. And I do want to do our official Titans offseason to-do list because we know that, hey, the Titans need help at corner, the Titans need help at receiver, the Titans need a whole lot of help on the offensive line. You have money, you have cap space, you have limited draft picks, but I do want to kind of plan out exactly what the Titans to-do list is, and maybe shopping list is the better word for it. But could the Titans supplement the wide receiver room via free agency or via a trade? Could there be names on the trade block or names that the Titans could potentially get in on the sweepstakes of that could help this team right away? One that we've talked a decent bit about is T. Higgins. T. Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are looking at a massive, massive number that they're going to pay Jamar Chase coming down the pipe. T. Higgins could get tagged. T. Higgins could walk as a free agent. We've talked about this. Probably the most likely path for T. Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals, if he is on the market at all, if he is wearing a different uniform this upcoming season, it's likely a tag and trade. Another name that has emerged over the past couple of days is Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins is a free agent this offseason. Justin Jefferson has been very outspoken and that he wants to play with Kirk Cousins, that he's not going to sign an extension with the Minnesota Vikings if he doesn't know what their quarterback plan is. Justin Jefferson is going into his fifth-year option, so in 2025, he's a UFA. Yeah. So Justin Jefferson could be a name that could be potentially in the trade sweepstakes. So I'll ask you, if you were the Titans, if you're the general manager of the Titans, would you be in on either the T. Higgins and or the Justin Jefferson sweepstakes? What would you be willing to give up?
Yeah, I would be in on both of them. Knowing that one is going to cause you to have to give up a lot, especially if you're trying to sign, Justin Jefferson this year. You would not only have to sign him or do a sign and trade, you would have to give up assets as well. And we're talking maybe 2 first-round picks for Justin Jefferson. That's where it starts, 2 first-round picks, because he's like a quarterback. He's that talented, and he has been. So you got to start in the ballpark with 2 first-round picks. And then you go from there. Not only do you got to give up 2 first-rounders, you got to pay this man close to $40 million per year. That's what the going rate is going to. It's going to be somewhere around 35, 36,
You're
somewhere around
approaching
there.
quarterback money for these receivers.
Yeah, so he's going to set the market, and he said he wants to reset the market. If I was him, I would be looking to do the same exact thing because my numbers state that, listen, I am the best, if not the best wide receiver. I am the second best wide receiver in the National Football League. So he's going to reset the market. So when you're looking at those two guys, and there are other guys, Mike Evans, the kid out of Indianapolis, he's going to be a free agent. So there's other free agents, but I think Justin Jefferson is on a plane of his own because you got to give up quarterback assets and money to get him. Mm-hmm. T. Higgins is a different story, but I think Cincinnati is still, and tell me if y'all agree with this, Cincinnati doesn't have to do anything this year.
They don't have to.
They can tag him, and if he don't want to play for the tag, he can't play, period. They may try to work on a deal or whatnot, but even with T. Higgins, Cincinnati is going to be looking for a first-round pick. So are you willing to give up a first-round pick as well as paying T. Higgins, upwards of possibly $30 million, close to that? If you're willing to do it, then okay. But if you go down that road, there are assets you're going to have to give up, and not only the assets, but the money.
That really gives me hesitation. As great as Jefferson is, like let's just say that he were an unrestricted free agent, mm-hmm. and you would have to pay, as you said, probably set the market higher than anybody's ever paid before for a wide receiver. It would be tempting to do that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, are you ready with the rest of your roster to win with paying him what you would need to pay him? I think that's a serious question. And that doesn't even count the actual reality where you probably have to trade some pretty decent assets if you want to get in on that game. Mm-hmm. So to me, that sort of crosses it off the list. Especially, I think the other thing that is a very important part of every discussion is what are the alternative options out there. You just named some pretty good guys that could be out there.
Indianapolis, Michael Pittman.
Michael Pittman's the guy you're thinking about. Yeah. Last year, when it got to the DeAndre Hopkins, part of our discussion, and we had all summer to talk about it, so we hit it from every single angle that there was there really weren't anybody else. There weren't any other receivers out there that could help the Titans.
No other option.
They had a desperate need for another guy, and he was the only guy. So it was smart to do it from that aspect, even though we tried to temper expectations that you're not getting the 1,500-yard dominant player that he was 4 years ago. But at the same time, you got a really solid pro that you got a really good year out of. So I would do that deal again in a heartbeat.
Totally.
But this one's a little different. I think it's too rich, too many assets. If they were close to winning, then I might feel differently about it.
When it comes to T. Higgins, I think it's two different conversations because I think they're two different players, and you would have to give up different assets in order to get them. And I do think that they would probably warrant different money. Mm-hmm. With T. Higgins, the more we talk about it, we've talked about it on a couple different occasions. The more we talk about it, the more I lean away from the Titans pursuing T. Higgins. First and foremost, because I don't know if he's a 1. Mm-hmm. Like, he might be a really good 2. He could be a 1. We just don't know that darn near every single receiver in the National Football League is going to be a 2 when they're next to Jamar Chase. But if I have to pay him and give up assets to get him, I better know that he's a 1. I better know exactly what I'm getting. Now, Brian Callahan probably does know much better than we do what the Titans would get out of T. Higgins if they did indeed trade for T. Higgins. But with that uncertainty for me, and the fact that minimum you would probably have to give up a second-round pick, and that second-round pick is the 38th overall pick, that's not something that I'm interested in. Justin Jefferson is a very different story. Because Justin Jefferson is a 1. Justin Jefferson is one of the best receivers in the National Football League. But you're going to have to give up a whole lot more to get him. I think minimum it's 2 first-round picks. Mm-hmm. That would be a swap with Minnesota this year, and Minnesota picks at 11 this year. So you would swap, you would get the 11th overall pick, and you would also have to trade your first-round pick next year. That is scary, and that's a lot. But I'm not completely out on that, just because that's the kind of player that Justin Jefferson is, that he is a total and complete game changer. but I think minimum it's 2 first-round picks. I think you would also have to sweeten the pot a little bit more with some seconds and some thirds and some later round picks.
Some.
Yes, so I think it would be multiple.
So I guess my question back to you, if you're in on that,
Yeah.
how do you build the rest of the roster that's good enough to win by giving up that price? Like no first-round picks, it's going to a huge part of the pie of your salary cap. What do you have left?
If it was 2 first-round picks, I would be willing to do it. But on top of that, what are we talking here? Is it a 2 first-round picks?
Let's just say the two first-round picks. Do you really think you could build a winner without your next 2 first-round picks?
Well, you would get Minnesota's 11th. So you would swap picks this year.
Okay.
So you would still have.
I thought you were just trading them the first-round pick.
You would swap picks this year and then give them your first-round pick next year. I still think you can find a pretty darn good player at 11. You can still probably find a left tackle there. Maybe it's a corner there at 11. I still think you can find a quality starter with the 11th overall pick. You should find a quality starter with the 11th overall pick. So you could trade away your first-round pick next year. And that's tough to swallow, especially when you're looking at a Titans team that needs to address a lot, that doesn't have a ton of picks over the next couple of years. But I would be willing to do that because I know what I'm getting with Justin Jefferson. And I don't love giving up picks and paying the player, the cash and the picks, but it's Justin Jefferson. I would be willing to do that. But where I would have some pause is the extra. Like, you want my second-round pick this year, too? I don't know if I can throw that in there as well. But the other part of that, too, is if Minnesota is trading Justin Jefferson, that likely means that Kirk Cousins is not a Minnesota Viking next year, which means that Minnesota probably wants to pick a quarterback in this year's draft. Is the 7th overall pick attractive enough for Minnesota if they want their quarterback? Probably not. So you would have to give up even more in order to get Justin Jefferson. And if that's the case, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to because he is a legitimate game changer. He is, he affects what the defense does. And not many guys can do that. There's probably a handful of guys in the National Football League, and one that come, obviously Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson are those 2 guys. And I'm not taking anything away from Jamar Chase, and A.J. Brown, guys like that. But the guys that are at the top of the list are Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill because their ability to beat you in multiple ways. Not only can they beat you down the field, they can beat you short, catch a short pass, and get up the field. So when you're doing that, it's going to bring more to get that individual because he affects not only what you do from an offensive standpoint, and he does affect defensively. Why? Because now the defense can play a certain way,
right?
Because they know that we're going to score points with Justin Jefferson. We're going to have more than likely a high-powered offense if we team him up with the right quarterback and any other pieces.
And you're going to be throwing the football more.
Yeah, you're going to be throwing the
Titans
football a lot. You're going to be throwing the football a little bit more than what you have seen in the last 20-some years, close to 30 years. You're going to be throwing. If you get a guy like that, you're going to be throwing. You're going to throw more anyway. Now that's because the NFL. That's the way it is. But I'm not sure. In a perfect world, yeah, get Justin Jefferson, and here we go. But it's not a perfect world, and the Titans are not. I don't think the Titans are willing, as much as they probably love Justin Jefferson and would love to have him. Yeah, exactly. They're not willing to give up what they would have to give up and then pay him to have him on the roster.
It goes against my overall philosophy of how I think to build a winning roster. I think the concentration early, building the foundation, building the depth, keeping your draft picks, to me that makes a lot more sense than going for the one superstar and trading away a lot of important draft capital that I think you're going to need. One player is not going, as great as he is, one player is not going to turn this team into a contender, I don't think. They don't have the rest of the pieces yet. I would concentrate for the next year or two to build the rest of the roster, is how I would think.
And I know that the argument to not going after a T. Higgins or a Justin Jefferson is, well, you can get a younger and cheaper receiver in the draft this year. And that's true, because I've seen a few mock drafts that have come out, and Field Gates' most recent mock draft, he had the Titans taking Rome Odunze at 7. I have no problem with that. But then that begs the question, well, then where's your left tackle coming from? Because this free agency core of tackles isn't the best, isn't the most robust. And then, of course, when it comes to free agents, you're going to have to pay those left tackles top dollar. So it's a puzzle, kind of, that Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan are going to have to play of limited draft picks and looking at the free agency market of what's the more attractive position in free agency. Because, frankly, I don't know if you're finding your left tackle of the future in free agency this year. So it's almost like piecing together what do you have available to you in the draft? What are some deeper positions in the draft that you could maybe address in the second round or the fourth round or the fifth round? What can you address in free agency? Because the Titans can spend in free agency.
Yeah.
They should spend in free agency. They have way too many needs that they can only address in the draft.
I would imagine, especially in something that I have filed away that they talked about in the 2 podcasts is when the cap casualties start coming, that I think is where the Titans are really going to look hard. Because I think that they can get volume. They have some money to spend, and you don't have to blow it on 3 guys, right? You have the ability to go shopping and really make some good offers, probably outbid some teams, and still keep the budget the way you want it and fill quite a few holes. I think you can catch up in this league a lot because, as we know, the system pulls everybody to the middle, right? The Titans are down. We've got a standard that we've watched for the last 5 or 6 years that they've failed to hit the last couple of years, but it doesn't mean they're that far from the middle, right? And that's the first thing you can do is you can get this roster that's the goal anyway, get the roster in a better position than it was last year. Last year, everything had to go right.
Oh, it was horrible.
You know, everything had to go right, and a lot went wrong before they even played a game.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, okay, we have these 2 big names out there, in potentially one in T. Higgins, but potentially a second in Justin Jefferson. So obviously everybody's going to be going at them. If indeed you got to have a contingency plan to me, you got to be able to look at the free agent market and say, okay, if Justin Jefferson isn't on, if he doesn't become or Minnesota said no, we're not, we're just going to give him 5th-year option.
Maybe he signs the extension.
And we'll try to work on the deal, but we are not parting ways with Justin Jefferson. Okay, well that only leaves at the top of the hill T. Higgins. My thing is this. I don't think the Titans may make a push at T. Higgins, but they're going to be sensible in doing it. But I'm going to say something that is not going to be popular around here. You got a new head coach, going to be offensive coordinator. We saw the type of offense that they ran. We know his background and everything else. He's going to be in control of the offense. Treylon Burks is still sitting here. They're going to go get another wide receiver.
They need to.
They need to because D-Hop, he's on the last year of a contract, and he's getting older. They're going to get another one. But they are going to see what they have in Treylon Burks in this new offense. You know why? Because this offense is not going to be geared around D-Hop. Last year, the passing game was geared around D-Hop, and rightfully so. You know, he had his former offensive coordinator. I'm pretty sure that was sort of the allure to get him in here. You catch this many balls. You see, then you know his incentives were based on catches and touchdowns and all this other stuff.
And so Treylon Burks largely wasn't available.
Yeah, and he was hurt and stuff like that. But they are going. This is the year you figure this out for Treylon Burks. You got a new offensive coordinator, got a new head coach, a guy that is going to try to take this offense and build it around the guys he got and the guys that he's bringing in. They're going to try to see what do they have in Treylon Burks this year. Because to me, if he does play 17 games in this offense, I think you're going to see a much better receiver. I don't know if he's a number 1, a number 2, or number 3. I don't know. But in this offense, you're going to find out truly what he is. And they're going to give him an opportunity to find that out. But they're still going to go get a guy either through the draft or a second-tier guy, like a Christian Kirk type of player that can come in here for lower value but going to give you high production because they want to see what they have in Treylon Burks. They're not – everybody's throwing them away, and I get it. I understand that. But they have it. They spent the first round draft pick on him. They're going to see what they can get out of him with the new head coach and the new system.
I think you have to at least try to see what you have in Traylon Burks. I can't put all my eggs in the basket that he's going to come to fruition, that he's going to be the number one. If he does, great. Wonderful. That's one of your problems that's solved. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. I want to get your thoughts on that. If you ran the Tennessee Titans, what would you be willing to give up for either T. Higgins or Justin Jefferson? And coming up next, what does the wide receiver money look like this upcoming season over the next few years? And also a name that we haven't mentioned that could be in the market. Would we be interested in a player like this? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Just like I always say to everyone that asks me this question, when you going out shopping for a car, you try to pay as least as possible, even though you know that it's an expensive car.
Right.
But you try to get as
try to nickel and
even
dime
if
it
it's 10
just a
cents
little.
off,
Right.
you're gonna try to get it off.
Right.
So I know that it's a business. I know that they have money in their pockets that they're trying to keep. But I know the value that I have. I know that what I bring to the table for this team. And I know the value that I have every time I step foot on that field. So I have faith in my circle, the people that I have, talking for me in the conversation with the contract. But, I'm just going to let it play its course and still continue doing what I'm doing.
There goes Justin Jefferson on with Pro Football Talk on Radio Row at the Super Bowl last week. Tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits tonight as MTSU basketball takes on New Mexico State at home. Pregame at 6 p.m., tip-off at 6:30, with coverage also available on 93.3 Classic Hits app and at 933classichits.com. We're live out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Predators taking on the Dallas Stars tonight at 7 p.m. Justin Jefferson says there, look, I know my worth, and that worth is probably going to be highest paid receiver in the history of the NFL. And then whenever Jamar Chase gets paid, it's going to be another highest paid receiver in the history of the NFL. And Justin Jefferson has come out and said, look, I'm not signing an extension with the Minnesota Vikings until I know what the plan is at quarterback. He's been outspoken about how he wants to play with Kirk Cousins. Can the Minnesota Vikings stomach signing Justin Jefferson to an extension that's worth probably, minimum $35 million a year, and signing Kirk Cousins to another contract? We'll see. We'll see. And I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to do everything in their power to hold on to Justin Jefferson because that is the kind of player that he is. But if he doesn't want to sign an extension, could he be on the trading block? Should the Titans be in on the Justin Jefferson sweepstakes? It would cost an arm and a freaking leg. But again, that's the kind of player that Justin Jefferson is. But we talked about T. Higgins. We talked about Justin Jefferson. There could be a potential player on the trading block that we haven't mentioned. Brandon Ayuk. I've seen his friend and his girlfriend post on social media. This was his good friend that posted on social media. This is the exact reason why we're leaving San Francisco. Thank you, 49ers, for drafting my brother. We're forever thankful. How do you throw, an X million dollar receiver, only 3 balls in the Super Bowl, so on and so forth? Very clearly, Brandon Ayuk's camp is unhappy with the San Francisco 49ers. He is going into his final year of his contract in the 2024 season. Could Brandon Ayuk be on the trading block? Would that be a move the 49ers would be willing to make? And is that someone that could be attractive to the Titans?
He doesn't make much money. That's an interesting one.
14 this upcoming season.
So I guess he was a first round pick. Yeah, first round
First
pick. So
round
they have
pick.
the first. They have the 5th-year option.
His
on
5th
there.
year
Okay.
option, yeah.
So he's going to get a raise. So I don't. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Is Ayuk a one?
Listen,
He's good.
He's a good player, and whether he's a 1 or not, I don't know. If I'm San Fran, I'm looking to keep him because the way Deebo Samuel plays, he's going to be consistently hurt as his career continues to go on.
Saw it in the Super Bowl.
And he's a really good receiver too, but he's a hybrid running back. That's what he is. But he's a damn good one.
Debo or Ayuk? Yeah.
Debo. He's a hybrid running back. He's like between the running back. He's sort of like he's a much better, and I mean much better Cordell Patterson. That's what he is. He's the guy that you put him in the backfield. You can run all the tricks, but then you can also line him up, and he can catch passes. He can be your primary receiver. So I don't know if Ayuk is a 1 or not, but he's a damn good receiver. But it's just funny. It's like, thank you for drafting us. It's like, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym. And like Rick Ross said, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym. How did it become us? And listen, he let his crew say that. So it is what it is. But it fascinates me, and it tickles my stomach when, you're other people that ain't putting in the work, that ain't getting hit. Oh, it's us. It ain't married to you. You know what I'm saying? Ain't your mama. Ain't your daddy. Oh, it's a thank you for drafting us. When did they draft us? I thought they drafted me. But that's the way of the world now. Everybody latches on and they feel
Yeah.
Your success is my success, which is our success. And I get it. I understand that. But listen, Rand Carthon has a history, albeit it's not that long, but it's a history with Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk is a really good player. I think they should have gotten him the ball more in the Super Bowl. But this is what people don't understand. It's easy to be a guy that's next to the guy. You know? It's easy to be Addison next to Jefferson. But then Addison showed that he can play. When Jefferson got hurt, Addison showed up before he got hurt.
T. Higgins to Jamar Chase.
T. Higgins to Jamar Chase. So it's good to be the guy next to the guy. But then when you got to be the guy because they got rid of the guy.
Can you be the guy?
Can you be the guy or you go somewhere? We've seen it across the NFL year after year after year. These teams look at these second wide receivers and they feel he's our number one. And then you sign him to a deal and he becomes not even the number two. Why? Because your expectation for him is to be a number one. So he's fallen from that, and he's fallen even further. He's not even a number two
and you're
because
paying
of the pressure.
You're paying him to be a lot more than that.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
That's tricky. Not everybody can make that jump. You know, the background that Rand Carthon might have on him intrigues me. I still look at the big picture and I say, is Ayuk going to turn the team by himself into a winner, paying handsomely for him and maybe having to give up assets to get him? And I still come back to, no, this team isn't ready to win. I'm looking, though, for somebody to fall through the cracks. I'm looking for, can I get a guy for less than I think he's really worth? Like, if you're overpaying for Ayuk or you're overpaying for Jefferson, to me, that's not the right way to go. Like, I'm looking for, like, T. Higgins, I'm thinking, could he slip through the cracks down the road? And you get him because you're opportunistic and you've got a tie-in with him with Callahan. That's how I think that could end up happening. But a lot has to happen for it to get to that point. Like I've said before, like he would be really attractive to me if he plays it out with the Bengals for one more year and then hits the market as an unrestricted free agent where the Bengals have no control anymore and they just may not have the money to keep him. I don't think they will. At that point, you're like, okay, now we're talking. We don't have to give up something to get him, and now we might be in a better position roster-wise to have him come in, and maybe Traylon Burks has taken a step forward. And like now we have a chance to round out a pretty good receiving core. That's what I'm looking for if I'm Rand Carthon, if I'm Brian Callahan, and not let's jump way out there and get X and give up this and this and this. Like I don't think that's the right building philosophy.
That's the difficult balance, I think, because you don't want to overpay and go out and get 7 or 8 free agents that you're going to pay top dollar or you're going to pay what market is worth. And you also don't want to go bargain hunting for every position of need because that's what the Titans did this past season, and we saw how that ended up, and it was not so hot. When it comes to free agency, you're going to overpay. Isn't that just the nature of free agency?
Well, I mean...
And the Titans can afford it. And that doesn't mean that you're going to go ahead and throw a $40 million contract at Brandon Ayuk just because you need to have Brandon Ayuk and you have to give him the best deal on the market. I'm not saying that necessarily, but I am saying if you see a guy, whether it's in free agency at receiver or tackle or tight end or corner or edge rusher, whatever position you might need, and you say that's a guy that can help us, yeah, you're going to have to pay for him. That's what free agency is. But are you willing to spend at those positions? Not overpay, and not overpay everybody, but are you willing to spend at those positions because you have money to spend? And you can't cut corners everywhere if you want to be able to compete.
Well, you're going to have the ability to spend the money.
And that doesn't mean spending it stupidly.
Exactly. And you may have to pay a little bit more depending on, if there's other suitors out there with T. Higgins. Now, listen, it's not only you got to pay, but you're going to have to possibly give us some picks if you want to indeed get him this year. Because there will be other teams sort of jockeying, trying to position themselves to get a T. Higgins. Because to me, he fits that prototypical number 2, but can move into that number 1 if the 1 is hurt.
Like a 1.5.
Yeah, he's thin, he's tall, he can get down the field. He's a red zone threat, which the Titans need desperately. We were always asking this season, why aren't they using, you know, D-Hop in the red zone more, or Traylon Burks when he was playing? They need a legitimate guy in the red zone, and I think T. Higgins would bring that to the Tennessee Titans. He's about 6'4", can go up and get the ball at his highest points. He's one of the best in the league at doing that. So he brings a skill set that you don't have at this particular moment, or if you do have it, you haven't used it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can go out and, you know, make a bid for him, but you got to know somebody else or two or three other teams are going to be doing the same thing. Are you willing to throw in that extra money to bring them here potentially? And in this situation, it's not necessarily extra money; it's picks.
Yeah.
You know, because then again, when you bring them here, you gotta sign them. You have to sign them.
You
like,
don't trade
there's-
for 'em if you
yeah,
don't play
there's
with
no
him.
ifs, ands, or buts about it. So which puts him in a better position now. So to me, if you're gonna get a T. Higgins, it has to be a sign and trade. It has to be, because you don't want to have to deal with trying to sign a guy that's entering the last year of his contract.
You have to trade for him. You got to sign him. And I don't always love money and picks.
I don't like
And that would be the same with IU.
I don't like that.
It'd be the
It
same
would
with
be the same
IU.
with
No
IU.
question.
And it would be the same with Justin Jefferson as well. I want to get into
Too
your
rich.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But you need a lot too.
Yes, you need a lot.
I want to get into your thoughts on this coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you were the general manager of the Titans, Brandon Ayuk could be on the trading block. Maybe Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, if they tag and trade. What would you be willing to give up? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round.
Happy Thursday, everyone. Hey, we're getting closer and closer to the weekend, which we know will bring a bunch of sports, whether it's college sports, pro sports. And if you're going to do that, which I know you will, then you need to do it with our partners, Zen Sports. And I'm going to tell you about their introductory promotion, which I've told you about the last couple of weeks. It's available to all new customers here in Tennessee. It's the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager when you place your first bet on Zen Sports. You will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports is launching they have launched their new VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up, people. The VIP program is by invite only, so you can't just jump in there all willy-nilly, all right, people? So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sports book, and I mean no other sports book, will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for, people? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports, betting just got better. And always remember this: if you have any gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and the Game Nashville app, live out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. The Predators take on the Dallas Stars tonight at 7 p.m. All your pregame coverage will start at 6 p.m. right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And you can tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow night as Vanderbilt women's basketball takes on Texas A&M on the road. Pregame at 7:45 p.m., tip-off at 8. Late game, my goodness. With coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. We're talking receivers, and we're talking a potential trade market for 3 big-name receivers. Justin Jefferson, does he want to stay in Minnesota if Kirk Cousins isn't in Minnesota? Brandon Ayuk, his friends have been pretty vocal on social media about how he doesn't want to be there. How does he feel? And also T. Higgins as well. We'll get into your thoughts on this. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter texts in and says, this, of course, being if we don't get T. Higgins. I know he's not a star name, but how bad would it be if the Titans decided to go for Braxton Berrios, the former Dolphin and New York Jet? He's speedy and a solid return man. He was the number 4 receiver for for Miami's wide receiver core last season, and the number 3 since Waddle was hurt for a portion of last year for them.
No.
Not in the market for number 4s.
Nah.
But there is that. I think that mindset has to be there, whether it's him or somebody else. And I think they got, for example, decent mileage out of Chris Moore last year, right?
And I think they'll get more mileage out of him this year.
I think there's an
Chris
art
Moore's better
form.
than Berrios.
I think there's an art form of looking for the right person who does slip through the cracks and just doesn't have the right role, and you say that guy's skill set fits with what we like to do, and we can get that guy for a bargain. I think you're looking for those. If you can just find a few, then all of a sudden your depth on your 45 or 53-man roster is better.
Yeah, he's
so
a
I think you've got to find those guys. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if he fits the scheme, but I think they're looking for certain guys like that.
He would be sort of a depth piece guy if you were to sign him, and you can sign him for, and I'm saying little to nothing, but it's a lot. But compared to what the other receivers are getting, it's bargain basement buying.
Right.
But
would we agree that Chris Moore was a pretty good bargain basement pickup?
And I think his role can expand this year. But, you know, guys like that you sign, like, closer to training camp, you know, because they're going to be there. And if you need him, or a guy you sign when somebody else gets hurt. Not to say that he's a bad player, because I think he's a good player, but he does nothing for your roster. He doesn't bolster your roster.
And it begs the question, like, how good do you want to be? Because, yeah, Chris Moore was a fine bargain pickup this past year, but it's also, there's only so much that Chris Moore can do for you. He was a fine pickup, and you still went 6-11. You know, do you want to compete this year? Do you want to try to make the playoffs this year? Do you want to contend for the division this year? If so, you need better players. The Titans just simply were not good enough last year. The roster just wasn't good enough. And, you know, like, Braxton Berrios is going to be a return man for you. You can find that a lot of places.
Well, they got some return
You can find
guys.
that in the 6th round of the draft.
They got guys that can return the football.
Austin texts in and says you can always address the offensive line and defensive guys during free agency and in later rounds in the draft. The Titans haven't drafted well in the 1st round anyways since Jeffrey Simmons. That is one mindset that truly drives me absolutely up a wall of who cares about the 1st round picks because you can't draft in the 1st round anyway. What?
It's the only way you're going to get better players.
That's the only way you're going to get better.
They got Taylor Lewan in the 1st round. He worked out pretty well. Jack Conklin, they didn't sign him back to a new deal, but he worked out pretty well for a 1st rounder. I mean, Corey Davis was a good 1st rounder, but he shouldn't have been drafted. The 3rd or 5th overall. But if you look at his numbers, he was 1st round worthy. So the notion that, they don't know how to draft in the 1st round, that's not the case. It's not the case, okay? So people stop that. And you can't just find offensive linemen in later rounds. You just can't. If that was the case, nobody would draft offensive linemen in the 1st round. They'll wait to the 5th, 6th, and 7th round to do it.
Not the level of lineman that you
Exactly. Like, you can find depth pieces.
Not likely.
Maybe you can find a diamond in the rough here and there. But if you're looking for a legitimate guy, the chances are you're going to find those guys higher in the draft.
And also, the general manager that did a decent bit of missing in the 1st round over the past couple of years is no longer the general manager here anymore. Skeeter texts in and says, as a Vikings fan, we are not trading Justin Jefferson. And if we do, we will get a haul. I believe they want to keep him and pair him with Addison for the long term. I do believe they will get an absolute haul. And I also believe that the Vikings' decision to trade Justin Jefferson or not is not entirely up to them. If Justin Jefferson doesn't want to sign an extension, he doesn't want to sign an extension. He'll go to free agency.
Well, they have him this year.
Yeah, they have him on the fifth-year
Yeah,
option this
it
year.
don't matter. He can't go anywhere unless they do a sign and trade. He's not going to sit out on that money that he would be getting. He's not going to pull a Le'Veon Bell. But after that, you know, anything is up in the air in regards to Justin Jefferson. But yeah, I can't see Minnesota getting rid of Justin Jefferson at all. Period.
Not easy.
Yeah.
Not that easy. Yeah, I do think that if Justin Jefferson comes to the point where he's like, look, I don't want to play with this quarterback, or if it's not Kirk Cousins, I do think they're going to want to get something in return for him.
Oh, yeah, they're going to have to. So,
They don't
which
wanna
means
just
they
let
would
him
have to
walk.
do it.
Oh, yeah.
They would have to do it this year, or they can possibly do it next because they can put a tag on them and then work out a deal with another team for a sign and trade. So
It's also difficult to put together a package that makes sense for both teams. Like
Yeah.
the Vikings might end up being a little disappointed, especially if they're put under the position, like you said, Caroline, where Jefferson's not giving them a choice. You kind of have to take what somebody offers, and it's not always going to be the haul that I think the caller is hoping for,
Right.
because they're not in a position of leverage with the negotiations. But how many teams can put together, like you guys were saying, we're talking about a guy, we're looking at the direction the wide receiver market is going with what people are paying wide receivers these days. To do that and give up a ton of assets, that's I don't care who you are.
It's tough to stomach.
But especially the Titans, I'm not getting into that game. That's too much for one player with where the roster is right now. There may be other teams, but it's probably going to be a team that's got their quarterback on their first contract and has a little extra money lying around. But I think you can start paring down the league. There's just a lot of teams that will, at the start, saying we can't put those kind of assets into one player. We can't do it with our cap situation, et cetera.
And it's a fair point that the Vikings might have to get into desperation mode. And you're probably not going to get too desperate when it comes to Justin Jefferson, because there are going to be plenty of teams that are picking up the phone and calling. But if other teams know that Justin Jefferson wants out, the price, in my opinion, goes down.
Sure.
Which is, if the Titans would be in the Justin Jefferson sweepstakes, would be a positive thing for the Titans. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So we'll catch up with Elliot Friedman in 1 hour. We'll get Elliot's thoughts on what Barry Trotz had to say on Jared's show earlier this week about the conversations that he has had with UC Saros, conversations that he's had with general managers around the league. But coming up next, it's our favorite time of the year. It is power ranking season. It is way too early power ranking season. What does the national media think of the Tennessee Titans? And I will give you a clue. It's not very good. We'll explain coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063 The Game and the Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we are broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. And our studio today is Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena, because the Predators are taking on the Dallas Stars tonight at 7 p.m. at Bridgestone Arena. We'll chat with Elliot Friedman in 1 hour. We'll get his thoughts on what Barry Trotz shared with Jared Stillman on Stillman & Company earlier this week. What's the latest with the goaltender? What's the latest with some thoughts around the league about what the Predators could do or might do at the trade deadline? We'll catch up with Elliot Friedman in 1 hour. But for now, it is our favorite time of the year. It's talking season. It's way too early projection season. It is mock draft season, and ESPN has put out their way too early power rankings going into 2024. So this was 80 writers, editors, TV people, football people at ESPN that were all asked to rank 1 through 32 every NFL team going into the 2024 season. Now, let's all acknowledge we still haven't drafted yet. Still have not gone through free agency yet. So a lot of these thoughts that we have right now are going to change. Like, let's say tomorrow, Travis Kelce decides to retire. Do we look at the Chiefs the same way? Probably not. So let's understand that these power rankings, a lot is going to change. Our perceptions of these teams are going to change. Heck, a lot of these teams don't even have quarterbacks. So it is much too early. But it is always interesting to kind of get a gauge nationally, people in Nashville, outside of Nashville, how they view the Tennessee Titans. Now, of course, whenever I open these things, I go straight for the Tennessee Titans. And I'm scrolling, and I'm scrolling, and I'm scrolling.
Keep scrolling.
Keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Yawn. And finally, you get to 28, the Tennessee Titans. That NFL Nation and reporters and TV people and editors and writers, 80 people at ESPN have consensus ranked the Tennessee Titans as the 28th best team in the NFL going into the 2024 season. Now, TD wrote this blurb about the Titans, where they are right now. It says the Titans offense was paralyzed last season by poor play in the trenches. That's the truth. Tennessee's 64 sacks allowed were tied with the Jets for the third most. All of the blame can't be placed on the offensive line, but Jalen Duncan and Andre Dillard were among the top 10 offensive linemen in sacks given up. The Titans will need to upgrade at least 2 of their 5 offensive line starters. Expect Tennessee to make a move in free agency. The Titans will also likely address the position in a draft class that is very deep there. Again, that was TD's kind of blurb about where the Titans sit right now. I know a lot of Titans fans might hear that, might see that, and be outraged. What do you mean, the 28th team in the league? My point is, like, can you really give the Titans any more benefit of the doubt? Do you expect the Titans to be any higher?
No, I think we're going to see this all summer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know that it's going to change dramatically, regardless of what moves they make in the draft and the offseason.
What would change, I think, is the teams around them.
Yeah, and even so, I think it's all going to be sort of relative. Every time I've seen an odds maker, I immediately look at the same thing you do. Let's see where the Titans are.
Yeah.
Everything I see is about 100 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Now, that's different than saying, hey, can they scratch out a few more wins and be 9-8 or 8-9?
A wild card team.
Yeah. That's way different than can they win the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But the power ranking doesn't surprise me at all, which is why, again, I think I would be careful on how I sell the expectation level from the top, from the PR down, because I think it's a new era. It's a rebuild, and so you have to be prepared for it to take some time to build a roster. I wouldn't start selling, hey, we can get right back in there. So people may not think that's important, but I think it's smart to sort of say, be patient. The Barry Trotz line that he keeps coming back to, when he sends Phil Tomasino down or Yusuf Parson, that's where, when you've set the table of, you got to be patient with me, these are the examples that come up during the season. Mm-hmm. If you're selling, hey, we got this great young quarterback, we can bounce back. We got this new coach and stuff. I think false expectations can burn you.
And I
think this is a reality check. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it doesn't get much higher. It wasn't much higher last year. Last year was, what was the highest we saw? 23? 22.
And we do know when it comes to national perception, the Titans never get the benefit of the doubt. The Titans never have the #1 headline on SportsCenter or any national television show. But I do wonder, to what extent can the Titans minimize expectations? They still got tickets to sell. They're still building a new stadium. No, you're not going to say, yeah, we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. Because one, duh, of course you want to win the Super Bowl this year. And two, I don't think anyone expects the Titans to win the Super Bowl this upcoming season. But when it comes to fair expectations, like, how realistic can the Titans afford to really be?
Well, just look at their roster. They have some guys that can be cornerstone guys. Will Levis. If you want to throw Peter Skoronski in there, you can. But I believe he's going to get better because of the coaching has gotten better at that position. Guys that you can, I'm talking guys that you can build with.
Yeah.
Tajay Spears, you can build with him. Jeffrey Simmons, obviously. Harold Landry. So you have guys that you can build with. It may not be a bunch of them, but you have guys. I think the main, for me, the expectations is to win football games. They won 6 games last year, and this was not a good roster. I do have faith that if they get the offensive line right, I think they would have cured half their problems, to me. If you get the offensive line right, you would have cured half your problems. Now, they have to, that's why, listening to Denard Wilson yesterday was a good thing. And he sort of, opened your eyes up to what he wants to do and whatnot. The defense is going to be different. They're going to tailor their defense and, to that point, their offense around the players that they have. They're going to see who they have and build it around, especially on defense. So I think this team is going to be better than what they were last year. As long as they fix the offensive line. If they fix the offensive line, then this team will look much better than what they looked last year, and I think they will win more than 6 games last year. A lot of their woes last year was that offensive line. The people from the outside looking in, they may say, no, it was the offensive line. We looked at it every week, and we saw they had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and because of that offensive line, they were not able to do the things that they wanted to. That's why I didn't put a lot of it on Tim Kelly. I'm like, hell, he only had so much to work with. I thought he was a good coordinator. But when this is what people got to understand. When you're playing the game and you got 2 receivers lined up on the outside, a back in the backfield, and that offensive line isn't blocking, and I run my route, and I'm in my route, and I'm looking for the ball, but then I see the quarterback on his back, I'm like, well, damn, and then everybody else is blaming it on this receiver, that receiver, but they're not looking at the core. The problem starts with the offensive line. I come from a premise of, the offensive line should set the tone for your team. If you got a nasty physical offensive line, that's how you're going to be as a team. If you have a sort of finesse, laissez-faire type of offensive line where, that's how your team's
like
going
last
to
year?
be. Exactly, like last year. That's how your team's going to be. Solidify that offensive line.
Laissez-faire is French for bad.
Yeah, so there you go. But solidify your offensive line. You solidify your offensive line, then your team will be much better. It will be.
I think that if I were to start listing the things, that would be number 1. And then number 2, as we talked about yesterday when we heard from Denard Walker, if you could get a great year from Jeffrey Simmons.
Denard Wilson.
Did I do it again?
Yes.
Good grief. Denard Walker was an underrated cornerback.
Yeah, if he could catch the ball, he would have been a great cornerback.
But he's not the same guy that's running the defense today.
Exactly.
Denard Wilson. If you could get a great year from Jeffrey Simmons, I think that would go a long way to helping you. And the other bump you get, and this is, again, the life in the salary cap, which always is pumping up hope, is you get a better schedule. They're going to have the last place schedule.
Yeah, they're going to have a better schedule. For those that believe in schedules.
It only affects 2 games, but that can really help you. I mean, just think about if you have 2 games on paper that in a lot of years, and it doesn't always mean that those games turn out to be easier.
Do we know what divisions the Titans are going to play next year? Speaking of that?
I don't know it off the top of my
I
head.
don't know either.
But that's another thing that can skew a schedule, right? And give you a little bit less of a challenge going into it. I mean, these are all things that give everybody hope in the Mike Vrabel, you don't ever have to rebuild. But I still think taking the long view is the right way to go. And I would not – I would be kind of saying, hey, we're the underdog. Nobody thinks we're any good. I think that's a good card to play, even in the locker room. Look at us. They got us 28th. Do you think we're finishing 28th? I mean, that's a great way to motivate a team. It's us against the world. I would play that to the fan base too. That way, if you do find yourself in the middle of the season at 5-4 or 6-5, then you're like, yeah, nobody thought we would be here. You know, that's a good story.
I do wonder, what do the Titans think? Because, Willy, you said, hey, just set the expectations at a fair place. You might need to say, hey, we are rebuilding. I do wonder what the Titans think. Do the Titans feel like they can win right now? If they do, then you're going to have...
If they do, they're insane.
I mean, win what? I mean...
Yeah.
They can win some games.
Compete.
Yeah.
What does compete mean?
Win the division. Do they feel like they could be in a position this year to make a run for the division, maybe even get a wild card spot in the playoffs?
Look, anything can happen, but I'm not.
Or are they saying, hey, look,
that.
we are rebuilding. We've got a lot of pieces to fill, because regardless of how they feel,
I keep that internal.
I think it's important, though, to know what the expectations are.
Well, I mean, you can.
I keep them low.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
but I think
we'll
see. Like if the Titans, for example, if the Titans go out and trade for Justin Jefferson, like you're trying to compete, you're trying to be good.
Up tremendously.
If you go out and you
They're
get
insane if they do that.
To a texter's point, Braxton Berrios, and that's your genius plan at wide receiver. Obviously, you're not trying to win football games.
This team.
Well, we just went through their roster.
Yeah,
their roster is so thin. One guy's not going to help.
This roster is thin. They're going to have to build up this roster. But, there are multiple ways you can sort of build your roster and sort of win at the same time. We look right in our division. Houston was able to do it. Jacksonville was able to do it eventually. Indianapolis, we see they're always on this cusp of, can they really win? And then end up being average. But they have something there. They just got to tap into whatever it is. And Titan fans hope they never tap into it. I as well hope they never tap into it too. But they can win in this division. Why? Because this division isn't like solidified just yet. We saw some great quarterback play from C.J. Stroud. We saw some great quarterback play at times, but then some lackluster quarterback play from Trevor Lawrence. We saw what Richardson could be, but he ended up getting hurt. But they still bringing him along slowly. So you look at all these three quarterbacks, and then you look at Will Levis, and you say, well, we did see some really good things from Will Levis, but we saw some things that he needs to get better at. I think from that standpoint, all these teams are in it together. They're in this bundle together. But what separates, Houston from the Titans, because the Titans were the worst team in the conference, their quarterback was playing a little bit better. Not only their quarterback, their defense was healthy, and they were playing a lot better. If the Titans can get to that point where Will Levis is playing good football, he plays good football, why? You build up that offensive line. So now I'm closer to Houston than I was in previous years, well, at least last year. Why? Because I'm protecting my quarterback now, and now I give my quarterback an opportunity to play good football. He didn't have much of an opportunity to play good football last year.
Right.
He did at times, but then at times he just looked like a rookie quarterback. So if you solidify that, you push them closer to a Houston. Not to say that they're better than Houston or they're better than Jacksonville, but you give your quarterback who you believe in an opportunity to go out there and play. He didn't have an opportunity. Why? The offensive line was bad. I guarantee you, if Houston offensive line was horrible, C.J. Stroud wouldn't have looked as good as he did. Jacksonville, they boasted their offensive line a little bit more, but their quarterback was still up and down, up and down. Richardson, had he played the whole season, I think he would have been better. Why? Because of his offensive line, and there's this running back. So if you solidify that offensive line, Will Levis, you give him an opportunity to be closer to a C.J. Stroud or closer to the Trevor Lawrence. I'm not saying he's those guys, but he gets an opportunity to at least compete with them. He couldn't compete with them last year. Why? Because the offensive line was trash.
See, what you're painting, D-Mase, the optimistic view of what could happen, I think those are all realistic things. But my point is I would want, if I'm at the top, knowing that I've got a young coach and a young GM, a young quarterback, there's a lot of ways it can go. It could go really bad.
Yeah.
If you get a rash of injuries, we know in this league you could have a really good team going into a season and the wheels fall off just because everybody gets hurt. That happened to this team 2 years ago. It happened to the Bengals last year, who recovered very well and did well to finish 9-8. But if I'm at the top, especially in the first year of a new regime, and remember I asked Paul Kuharsky, he didn't buy into this philosophy. I do. I want, if the team ends up 8-9, for the fan base to feel excited about 8-9, not disappointed that 8-9. If you start going out there, we can win the division, we can do this, and they finish 8-9, then there's disappointment. I want the expectation to be low, where there is no expectation. I'm pointing to, hey, everybody thinks we're going to be 28th in the power rankings. Look at that. That's what the expectation is. We're going to try to exceed that expectation. And maybe you hang around. Maybe it's a great story. But I want, regardless, for the fan base to feel good about the direction of where it's going, even if it ends up being outside of the record. Yeah, and I think that's what you're looking for. Did you fix the offensive line? Did Burks take a step forward? Did Spears take a step forward? Obviously, did Levis take a step forward? How does the defense look? Did Simmons rebound to become a dominant player? These are all the things that you hope can go right, and that maybe doesn't even get to what the record is. But if all those things are moving in the right direction, then I feel good about the following year. You can't play the rebuild card for 2 or 3 straight years. You can't do it.
No.
You can do it for 1 year with a brand new coach, brand new young quarterback, young coach, young GM. I think you could sell that for a year. Hey, let's see what happens. Expectations are really low. Look at the power rankings, 28th. I would sell that.
I also don't think that all 8 and 9s are created equal.
100%.
Look at the Bengals. I picked the Bengals to win the Super Bowl this past year. I think a lot of Bengals fans expected to be back in the conversation. They ended up going 9-8. Well, if Joe Burrow was healthy the entirety of the season, that 9-8 is significantly more disappointing than Joe Burrow getting injured. If the Titans go 8-9, and the offensive line is still not better, that Will Levis is regressing, that the defense really has struggled, but you're able to maybe eke out a couple of really close wins here and there, I'm not going to feel good about that, and I don't think Titans fans should feel good about that either. But if you go 8-9 and you're competitive in every game that you play, Will Levis has more time to throw the football, you feel really good about some of these young players that have made steps forward, well, then I can feel better about that. I think it's all about the results. And I think as far as the Titans are concerned, it's in terms of the roster. Is the roster getting better, or are you eking out wins with players that are just kind of patchy 1 to 2 year deals and players that are, middle of the pack average players? Like, you want to see direction. You want to see upward momentum. You don't want to just see, continuing down this path of not good enough.
Well, that's what allowed Mike Vrabel to gain sort of that favor. Look at what he's doing with that roster, and he still got those guys playing. Wait till they bolster the roster. Wait till this guy comes back off injury.
Yeah.
Look how good they're going to be. So that allowed him favor throughout the NFL and here in Nashville. Like, okay, look at what he's doing with the roster when they're broken. Just imagine what he can do with it when it's not. Look at what he did, a couple of years ago. They went to the AFC Championship game with a good roster, but not great roster. So things like that can, cause the fan base, like you said, every 8-9 is not, created equal. Well, Vrabel's, whatever it was, 9-8 the year before, people felt good about it. Why? Because they said he had a bunch of injuries and, had he not had these injuries, look at the close games they played. So it was better for him moving forward.
Yeah.
That's what they have to do here this season. Like, however this season ends, like you said, we have to be able to look at things that are tangible and say, okay, he's getting better. He's getting better. That group got better. They may end up being 7-10 or or 8-9, but you see progress in all these other areas, which means hope for the next season as they continue to build this roster. Because Willie was right, you can only get away with rebuilding for 1 year. After that, people expect you to have this thing right
There's
now.
an expiration date
Exactly.
of the rebuild cell. And I think the biggest thing, the question that you want to see is Will Levis going to be your quarterback of the future?
Yeah.
Like that's really, I think, the biggest takeaway from this season. I think the offseason should be dedicated to figuring out that question. Is Will Levis your quarterback of the future? I'm going to continue this conversation coming up next and get into your thoughts on it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Plus, coming up next, we heard from Nick Holtz, offensive coordinator. We heard from Denard Wilson and Brian Callahan in their press conference yesterday. Some more of our takeaways. Plus, one thing that I think some people might think it's a really big deal. I don't really think it's that big of a deal, and we'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
What's the head coach, assistant coach, son, father dynamic like?
It's been really normal. It's been he's very understanding and of what it means to sit in the chair that I sit in every day, having done it himself. He knows when advice is welcome. He knows when he probably should leave me alone. I know when I should leave him alone on the flip side. But it's just been really fun for us to be able to I said he's got this 16-inch clincher, those softballs, the 16-inch softballs, and he played growing up, and he has one of them in his office, and he came in the office the other day. It was probably about 9:00, and we were kind of finishing some stuff up, and I'm sitting there throwing a softball back and forth as we're talking about some different ideas for something. And so just to have that experience has been really cool. And, he just wants to be able to help me and to help this organization win. And that part's been really fun. It's been a really cool experience for me so far.
People, let me tell you about my best friend.
That was Titans head coach Brian Callahan. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're live out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Predators take on the Dallas Stars tonight. There were a lot of questions yesterday to Brian Callahan about working with his dad, and I get it because it's the father-son dynamic, and your son's the head coach. He's the boss of his dad. It's an interesting kind of dynamic there. I'll be honest, I really don't care that it's his dad. I care more about who his dad is and the resume of his dad than I do about the working relationship between head coach, son, offensive line coach, dad.
Yeah.
It's a cool story, for
It is.
sure.
It's definitely a cool story. It reminds me, as he's talking, I'm thinking of a old school, Willie, you remember these, the Saturday morning family shows they used to show back in the days, early Saturday morning. They would show
every Saturday morning.
Cool show about a family. And
Yeah.
so it reminded me of that and sort of Leave It to
Or
Beaver.
the cartoons with the life lessons.
Yeah.
Yes. There was a little moral of the story at the end.
So
About
it's
being a good friend.
Leave It
Yeah.
to Beaver while he's throwing it to his dad, and he's just out there talking. So that's what it kind of
It's very
reminded me of.
1950s.
Exactly.
Go to the diner.
But it's neat
It's cool.
from that respect, because I'm sure, like I have a really good relationship with my son. And if I was coaching, and he was coaching, I would love for that dynamic to happen.
Yeah.
That's why, I look at LeBron James and his son. I'm like, man, I do want him to play with his son because that's kind of cool, whether you like LeBron or not. That's
Totally.
cool to play with your kid. Like, wow. So from that aspect, it's a cool story. But, ultimately, Coach Callahan, Brian, is the boss. He's the head coach. And you brought your dad on staff not because he's your dad, but because he's the best at what he does.
That's the key.
Exactly. That's why you brought him on staff. Nepotism, damn it. If I'm getting the best guy, at that position, then bring him on. I don't care if he's my dad, my son, my daughter, whoever it is.
Yeah.
If you are the best at your job, then come on and we can coach or we can work together. So I don't see a problem with that. I think the Titans will benefit from it. I think this offensive line will benefit from it. These young players that sort of were going through the ups and the downs of this season, past season, they all will benefit from it because I've seen firsthand, watching guys that were just okay players to good players, and they end up being really, really good players because of the coach that's coaching them.
Yeah.
Whether it was, Mike Munchak, I can think of offensive linemen that we had. Those guys were great people, but Mike Munchak brought out the best in them, as far as players. When you see that and you watch it, it's like, okay, I see why you brought your dad on, because he's the best at his position. You expect him to come in here and bring out the best in these offensive linemen.
I think they want to create an atmosphere where there's a deep enjoyment of one another's company, respect for they think they can do the job. But he said something about, I want everybody to enjoy coming to work, and that gets tested if you're struggling. They're probably going to struggle for some, right? But he said if we can't enjoy coming to work, then what does that say about the environment we're creating for the players? I think there's logic to that, but just hopefully what they're able to do is make some gains. I thought it was critical what Callahan said about what they learned when they struggled. What do we say? They were 1-11 or 0-11 to start in the Taylor regime for the Bengals. And he said, but I could see that we were building a foundation, that we weren't winning, but we were doing the right things. We could see the small gains, and that won't be easy to sell, right? It's hard to tell your fan base, hey, I know we're 0-11, and Dan Campbell had to do it his first year in Detroit. Hey guys, I know we're not winning anything, but it's happening beneath the surface here. We're creating what we need to create. We're seeing some improvement here. Hang with us. I think that's a great experience to have gone through.
And it doesn't mean that you need to have a company pizza party every day. Like, it doesn't mean that you need to, have white elephant gift exchanges. But I do think that we saw last year how damaging an environment where you're constantly looking over your shoulder, where you don't feel like your ideas are heard, where there is not a clear boss, how damaging that can truly be. I mean, the team was not good last year. It ultimately moved on from the coach because of the environment of disagreements, of lack of trust.
You had more players on social media, kind of painting a picture that was not as what I think we all thought it was for a long time under Mike Vrabel, and I think it was. But you could tell there were cracks last year. There were more unhappy players. The Tierra Tart thing really surprised me. The guy went from being the coach's guy. This is a Vrabel guy. What a great find, undrafted free agent. They're turning this guy into something that happened that was really sour. Something soured.
Yeah, and that's what they don't want. That's what they want to get away from. And I'm sure, listen, every locker room has its problems. But when your problems start to seep out of the locker room, that's when it becomes bigger than what it actually needs to be. There are 32 teams. There are 32 problems. And if you times that by the players, there's more problems than that. But some teams are good at not allowing things to get outside of their building. The Titans start to allow things to get outside of their building. But with this team, in particular, you look at, the dad, Callahan, the dad, what does he need to do? Because obviously he's the best at his craft, at his position. So you have to break it down to build it up, just like anything. Get a chance to talk to Navy SEALs or whatnot. We've had a chance to talk to them, during my playing days. They break you down to build you up, and that's what you have to be able to do in this sense. Break an individual down, not break him down where he feels like, oh, the world is against me and I don't want to play no more. But it's breaking down those bad habits, breaking down those things that you learned in the past that are not advantageous for you in the future, breaking all of that mess down to build you back up with a bunch of good stuff. And I think the dad, he will be able to do that with this offensive line. And that's why I believe his job is the most critical job on that coaching staff. It is, because if you have a good offensive line, nine times out of 10, your team is going to be good. They may not win a Super Bowl, but they're going to be
It gives you a chance every week.
Absolutely. So he's got to break down all those bad habits from Skoronski, Nicholas, and whoever else that's going to be on it. He got to break it down and then build it back up.
I'm only laughing because it just sounds like a kid. Like, this is Dad Callahan, and this is Baby Callahan, and he's in charge.
Callahan Jr.
This is the baby. The other thing yesterday that I kind of wanted to toss around, as far as it comes to Nick Holtz, look, he's the offensive coordinator. That's an incredibly important person. He is going to be the one in the ear of Brian Callahan, who is calling plays. He has a massive role in game planning. But he's not the one that's calling plays. That Brian Callahan ultimately is the CEO, the president, the head coach of the offense. How much stake do we put into Nick Holtz in his role?
I think if you believe the Zach Taylor model, he said it's a misnomer. It's something that he basically put it this way: people don't understand that it's really as if you're calling the plays. He goes, I was calling the plays, but Brian Callahan was right there with me. We're thinking the same way. He thinks it's way over-exaggerated to say, well, he hasn't called plays. He doesn't think that's a big deal at all. And that was basically echoed yesterday. It's basically something that, the question was asked, is the hay already in the barn? And he went into a long, detailed answer about, a lot of it's in the barn. The work is done leading up, and the plays we select in the game, it's predetermined. And the offensive coordinator has so much to do with that, along with the quarterback himself. So I'll take him at his word on that, but I do think there's something to be said about that feel. Like Andy Reid, the feel to call that play at that time to win the Super Bowl, that's where you say, man, that's a brilliant offensive mind in the moment, right? And that's what that's what we'll have to find out about Callahan and Holtz as they get into those situations.
Yeah, to me, it does matter from this standpoint, and Willie brought it up, toward the tail end of that. And I've said this forever because you're sitting in those rooms and you know the good coordinators from the not so good ones, but you know the good ones from the great ones. The great ones are able to adjust and to know when to call that right play at that right time. That's why we think so highly of Andy, but now Shanahan is sort of sliding down this pole because he's had 2 opportunities as a head coach to do it, and he didn't. He had an opportunity as a coordinator, and he didn't do it. Do I think he's a bad coordinator? No, I think he's still a really good damn coordinator.
I'd take him.
Exactly, I would take him. But what separates him and say somebody like Andy is Andy knows when to call. Or he has about 5 plays in his back pocket that he goes to each and every time that he know, okay, this is going to get me what I need.
And it is interesting that you say
exactly.
that.
Every quarterback, every offensive coordinator isn't that way. So to me, you have Holtz. What's it? Holtz? How do you pronounce this? Holtz? Is it Holtz or Holtz?
Holtz.
I think it's Holtz.
There's a T in there somewhere.
Yeah,
Magic
Holtz.
T.
Yeah, Holtz. You have Holtz. His job is critical during the week, I believe, and he's right about that because the preparation is almost as important as the actual going out there and calling the plays game day. You got to be able to prepare, put it all together. We're all on the same page. We're all thinking the same way. All right, boom. This is the game plan. Now, Brian Callahan has to be able to, you have to show this fan base, that team that you know how to call plays. I believe he knows how to call plays. I have no doubt that he knows how to call plays, and he's going to be good at it. But you got to prove to this fan base that you know how to call plays at the right time.
Yeah.
You got to be ahead of plays. That's what we screamed about 2 years ago, where it just seemed like he was never ahead of the defensive coordinator. Todd Downing. He was always behind the defensive coordinator. Well, Brian Callahan, we know where you come from. We know who you coached under. We believe you're a good offensive coordinator / head coach. But you got to prove to us in those critical moments, third and 7, or 4th and 8, or 4th and 2, a minute left in the game. You're on their 40. What do you call? If you consistently call good plays, then we're going to think of you as what? A good offensive coordinator. Not because of what you've done. You might have called plays that didn't work for 3.5 quarters. But on that 2-minute drive with a minute left, you called all the right plays. Now our assumption, our thought is, he's a great play caller because look at what he does in the critical moments.
When it matters.
Exactly.
It's Brian Callahan's offense. Yeah, Nick Holtz's job is incredibly important, but ultimately it comes down to Brian Callahan. Just like Titans area scouts, they're incredibly important, but ultimately it's Rand Carthon's decision who you draft or who you acquire via free agency, who you trade for, so on and so forth. It's Brian Callahan's offense ultimately. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get into your thoughts, your calls, your texts coming up next. Plus, a move that was made yesterday in the NFL, and I was shocked. I really did not expect it. I don't really know how much I understand it. We'll get into that coming up next. Elliot Friedman at the top of the hour. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. They're helping people in a couple different ways with their financial gains. You've got a chance to advance because the Loan Pronto mortgage rates are down. That is something that maybe you're not aware of if you haven't paid much attention, and you might be in that position where, like, hey, I did get stuck with a 7 or 8% mortgage rate before. They have now rates at 5.9%, a cash-out refinance rate of 5.9%. That's a big drop. So you can get the refi now, get the cash out of your home's equity to wipe out the credit cards and other high-interest loans. You can save hundreds every month with those lower payments. Call today. You can even skip your next 2 mortgage payments. So if that sounds good to you, it should. All you've got to do is call Loan Pronto, and you can get the process started. And you can do it quick. No closing costs. These are all the things. You get a lot of benefits by going down this road. So call Loan Pronto. Don't waste any more time. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780. Or go to loanpronto.com and get the details. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, 5.49%, has 6.39% APR. Subject to lender approval.
I was shocked, Granny, when I saw Schefter tweeted that. It like my jaw dropped because I saw the job that Steve Wilks had done with his defense. We know that there's been like a lineage of defensive coordinators that's come through and has done a tremendous job with the San Francisco 49ers defense. And yes, he doesn't run the exact same scheme that Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans run, but obviously with the numbers that you showed, that he did better than what D'Amico Ryans did the prior 2 years. And when I look at this whole year, especially in the Super Bowl, where were those 5 All-Pro offensive players on offense for the San Francisco 49ers? Okay, the genius play calling, Kyle Shanahan. What happened to those guys? Again, just like you pointed out, this San Francisco 49ers defense only gave up 1 touchdown, and that was after a muff punt, what we call, like after a turnover.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're going to relieve the defensive coordinator of his duty, it just feels to me that Kyle Shanahan doesn't get it. Where's the accountability on his part as far as why he keeps falling short in these big moments?
Damian Woody on Get Up this morning. Now, I'm not going to say that Kyle Shanahan doesn't get it. I'm not going to go that far. But I saw the news yesterday that Kyle Shanahan moved on from defensive coordinator Steve Wilks, and I was stunned. The 49ers had the 3rd-ranked defense in the NFL this past year. They were averaging giving up, like 19 points a game?
No, it was 17 points a game.
It was 17 points a game. They held Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to 19 points in regulation in the Super Bowl.
One touchdown.
1 touchdown. Is that it? Was that it? You got fired for the 1 touchdown drive?
This is what I don't
It's a
understand.
pretty big touchdown drive.
What did Steve Wilks do to society or something? Like he got canned out for 1 year as the coach of the Cardinals. That's harsh. Then he took over the Panthers last year in an interim role, rallied them, got a lot out of them, got them back into a division race, fell just short. They didn't keep him. Then he goes and does this with San Francisco, has a great defense, and gets let go after the. Wait, what's he doing wrong? Like, he's got to be sitting there going, what did I do? Why do I deserve this?
Those are something we don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get it, though.
Could be some behind the scenes. I don't know.
I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Steve Wilks, the person.
No.
I'm with Damian Woody.
He gets no benefit of the doubt at all.
He doesn't get it. He's one of those guys that I perceive to be, he believes he's smarter than everybody else, and it's never his fault.
Where's the accountability on you?
That's what I'm saying.
Sure, you should stop the Chiefs from getting into the end zone in overtime, but where were you when you needed to call the right plays in overtime? Where were you to make sure that you got into the end zone and not the field goal? Where were you when you made the decision to receive in overtime?
Yeah, so to me, I'm with Dan. Like I said, I'm with Damian. It's like he doesn't get it. He doesn't realize that he's the common denominator on all this. Not to say that he's a bad coach, but even the really good coaches, you got to understand, like, we've been in this position several different times, albeit with different quarterbacks. But for the most part, this team has been one of the stacked teams in the National Football League. And in both Super Bowls, I couldn't get it done. I just couldn't for whatever reason. And then you dismiss your defensive coordinator. Why? Because maybe he played a defense that you didn't want him to play or whatnot. I don't know what the deal is, but I don't think he's self-aware. I really don't. It just because if you look at a situation like that and you're looking for a scapegoat and you blame the defensive coordinator, you use him as a scapegoat. That shows me that you're not reading things around you and you're not watching what everybody else is watching. Because to me, yes, listen, when you're going up against Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, if that's the case, whoever went up against Tom Brady, they should have got fired after the game, during the season and during the postseason, because no matter what you did, Tom just seemed to find an answer. Peyton Manning just seemed to find an answer. Mahomes just seems to find an answer. So he's going to keep on, going through defensive coordinator after defensive coordinator if he doesn't realize that, hey, maybe I'm the problem here. Maybe I need to change some things that I'm doing. Because Damian was right. Listen, where was all those all-pros, at the time that you needed them? You have them at your disposal. What were you doing? What were you calling? You know, why didn't you go to max protect? Why did this happen? Even though I know it ain't your fault that the guy just ran scot clean, it is your fault because you're offensive coordinator. You should have made sure everybody knew what they were doing when you called that play. So it
On
never
that third and 3, 4?
third and 3
On
at
overtime?
3. Yeah. So nothing ever. It seems like nothing ever falls back on Kyle Shanahan. You heard the excuse he made. You know, after as far as like, we are a winning team. Look at what we did. We it's hard to get to the Super Bowl. This and that and that and this. Yeah, I get it. It is hard to get to the Super Bowl, but you are the common denominator every time you get to the Super Bowl. Every time you're the guy that's calling plays, and for whatever reason, your offense seems to sputter.
And they had a chance to keep continuity, you know, and
Yeah.
because sometimes you can't control if D'Amico Ryans gets a head coaching job. That's
Yeah.
a good thing. That's a feather in your cap. But when you had a chance to stay with the same program, that's a mystifying one to me.
And he is such a well-respected, not just defensive coordinator, just overall coach
Yeah.
in the NFL. I was
I don't get that.
shocked. I did not step away from that Super Bowl thinking, man, if only the 49ers defense would have played better.
I don't think anybody did.
If you did, you are crazy, and you watched a different game than I did.
They played well at times, and then at times Patrick Mahomes figured them out.
And you know what? Patrick Mahomes does that.
Exactly. Just like Brock Purdy, at times figured them out, and at times, you know, Spags got him. You know, and it was at the end that Spags ended up getting him, and you know, you didn't do what you need to do as a team to, you know, capitalize on your opportunities.
Whew. And who's out there for the 49ers to hire?
They'll find somebody. They're hire within probably more than likely. You know, because I mean, there are defensive. Well, Wink Martindale took the job at
He's in
Michigan.
college.
Yeah, he took the job in Michigan. I wonder how that's going to go because the type of defense he like playing, I don't know if you got to have some studs like across the board everywhere. And I don't know too many college teams, even the best ones, Michigan, Alabama. You ain't got studs across the board. So if you want to play that aggressive type defense, you better have you some players. So I don't know who's out there, but I'm sure there's somebody either within their coaching staff that they will elevate. You just think like, where is Wilkes going to go now? So
Feels like a little self-sabotage going on there with Kyle
Yeah.
Shanahan and the 49ers. All right, coming up next, Elliot Friedman, the 32 Thoughts podcast and Sportsnet will join us coming up next. We'll touch on what Barry Trotz had to say with Jared earlier this week. How are the Predators approaching the trade deadline? What's the future of UC Soros? Is that in Nashville? And, of course, some breaking news around the NHL as well. Elliot Friedman will join us coming up next. And you can tune into 93.3 Classic Hits this Sunday for coverage of the Daytona 500. Coverage will begin at 12:30 p.m. with the race starting at 1:30 p.m. Coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic Hits app and at 933classichits.com. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And today we're out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena because the Predators are hosting the Dallas Stars tonight. ESPN game tonight. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. Pre-game coverage starting at 6 p.m. on 1025 and 1063 The Game. And a little programming note. On 1025 and 1063 The Game, we will carry Vanderbilt baseball live on opening night, Friday night, and Vanderbilt has moved first pitch up to 1 p.m., originally scheduled for 4:30 p.m. I know there's going to be some nasty weather on Friday, so they're moving up first pitch to accommodate for that. So 1 p.m. first pitch for Vanderbilt's opener against Florida Atlantic on Friday. We will carry that starting at 1 p.m. Joining us now is Elliot Friedman of 32 Thoughts Podcast and Sportsnet. Elliot, always appreciate you for stopping by and for your insight. So Barry Trotz joined our afternoon show earlier this week, and he talked about how he has had a conversation with UC Saros about a potential trade, a potential move, was open and honest about that. One thing we were touching on yesterday is I'm sure UC Saros and any other player would appreciate the openness and honesty from the general manager, but how could that potentially affect him mentally, and maybe even could that be a contributing factor to some of the hot and cold play we've seen from UC Saros this season?
Well, over the years, Caroline, I've learned that everybody's different. Some players really are. It's like people, right? Like one of the things I really do feel is that in our business we are kind of qualified to comment on this stuff because we work in a very volatile business. So we understand what it's like to be in one place on one day and then something happen on another day that we're not necessarily expecting. And there are people I've worked with who handle that very well. They understand that such is life. And there's people I work with who, if there isn't long-term security, they really get screwed up emotionally. So I've seen both sides of it. I think people can react differently. I think what has happened here in Saros' case that may, if he's been thrown a bit, I think what it would be is this. I just think earlier in the year, Barry Trotz had said that he wasn't looking to move Saros and that they were going to talk about an extension in the off season. I think then you put yourself in this kind of mindset where you're like, okay, I'm here. I don't have to worry about any of this stuff. And now, Trotz has gone back to him and said, it's possible. So all of a sudden, Saros has gone from, and it's even tougher. Like, I think sometimes at the end of the season, you leave for the end of the summer, or you leave at the end of the year for the summer, and you kind of have it in your head like, this could happen, I better be prepared for it. I think it's always tougher during the season when plans change because you're trying to win games. You're trying to, you know how important you are to your teammates. And when that changes, it really can throw a wrench. So I don't know for sure that has affected Saros that way. You guys are closer to it than me. But I do see how when plans change during a season, it's a thing. Like Philadelphia is playing in Toronto today, and there's a lot of trade rumors around their team, and they're winning games, they're having a better year than expected, but you can see it on the guys in that room. Like, they are enjoying, they're winning, they're happy, but they know there could be some changes coming, and I think it's only normal to have it affect your mind.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, it's a business, but also you're dealing with human emotion. I mean, it's a natural feeling. Elliot Friedman is with us, and speaking of some Saros trade rumors, Barry Trotz also shared with us that he's been having conversations with Tom Fitzgerald, general manager in New Jersey. My favorite line from Barry, he said, I always remind him, he needs a goaltender, I don't. And when it comes to Saros trade talks, he said, look, you're going to have to blow me away. We've known that. The Barry Trotz needs an absolute haul in order to trade UC Saros. Do you think that's something that either New Jersey or another team in the NHL would be willing to give up at this point in the season or even over the summer?
Well, I do. I do. Like, you know what, Carolyn, do you play poker?
I do not, no.
Okay.
More of an observer.
Yeah, well, but I mean, that's what this is. They're playing poker right now. They're sitting down at a table, and Barry Trotz has a good chip stack, and he's got a good chip stack because he's got a really good goalie. And there's some other people out there, and I don't think it's just New Jersey. I think it would be a team like Los Angeles, I think it could be a couple other teams too that are going to look at this guy and they're going to say, UC Saros would look really good in our uniform. And so what he's doing is he's playing all these teams off against each other. But the other thing too, and this is where the danger, I don't even know if danger is the right word, but this is what Trotz has to be aware of. There's a lot of goalies out there. Now, not all of them are as good as Saros. Like I think Markstrom is on the high level out there. Like he's a guy was almost traded to New Jersey last week, and he's a guy that's having a phenomenal year, and he's signed for a couple more seasons beyond where Saros is. He has to be aware of what the other goalies and other teams are doing, because you don't want to put yourself in a case where, okay, you want to make a deal, but when the other teams say, I can make a deal easier with this other team rather than you. So it's a really interesting challenge, because he does have a great goalie there that he could get a lot for. But if teams say, you know what, I don't like what he's asking for, I think it's too much, we could go somewhere else. And again, I don't think there's many as good as Saros, but I think Markstrom would be one that some teams would say, if we can't get Saros, we would be happy with Markstrom.
We'll talk with Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts podcast. Check it out. Elliot, because we discussed the whole, how do you react as a player when you know there can be potential movements, in regards to you? And, I gave my experience, because I had that experience. I think it was my third year in the NFL, where trade talks were coming up, and it was affecting me as a player when I went out to practice or whatnot. It was like a seesaw. One, you have a good practice, or say have a good game, and then everything's great. But then maybe if you don't have a good practice or a good game, it's like, oh man, are they going to trade me? When you look at UC Saros, the other night versus the Devils, he had 40-something saves. The most he's had all season. So you can say, well, UC played a good game, but they didn't win. How do you approach that as a head coach, as the trade deadline, which is the 8th of March, is sort of on the horizon? How do you approach that when your goalie does play well, but he does give up a goal at the end, and there is sort of this trade talk? How does GMs usually approach that? Because it's all not on him as a player, meaning Saros.
100%. Well, first of all, Derek, did you threaten to pancake block Barry Trotz like you used to those cornerbacks?
Hey, listen, if Barry trades them, I think me and Barry are going to have to go on the ice.
You say, did you see the way I blocked some cornerbacks on run plays, Barry? Look out for that. I think this. I don't think one bad goal or one bad game is going to affect what Nashville thinks about UC Saros. I think they know how good he is, and I think they know how loyal and important he is. I said this to you guys a couple of weeks ago, and I believe it even more now. I don't think this is about, for the Predators, where UC Saros is now. I think it's about where it's going. He can sign an extension on July 1st. He's got another year left on his contract, and then you have to give him another deal. And I've been around enough of these to know that this conversation we're having is not only about how he's playing, it's about his next contract. And it says to me that the Predators know that that's obviously going to be a big contract, and they're not sure about it. And it doesn't mean they think he's a bad goalie. It doesn't mean they think he's a bad guy. It just means that they're not sure about the next contract and what it's going to mean. So when we're looking at this story right now, I don't think it's about Saros as a goalie. I think GMs and teams, they know who this weighs on, and they know who it doesn't. And they know that Saros is probably going to be a little bit disappointed that it's gone from not a chance to it may happen. So it's hard, and I think the organization understands that. To me, this is a bigger picture conversation, not only about a trade. Well, it's about a trade. It's about his next contract, and I think it's one other thing, and that is the Predators, they're looking for elite offensive talent. And if you want to if you need to get something good, you need to give up something good. And I don't know that there's anything on their roster, aside from Yossi probably, who you're not trading, that will get you could get you an offensive talent like Saros does. So I think that is part of the equation too.
Now, do you also think the problem could be because, we got a caller or a texter yesterday that said, well, go ahead and trade UC, get you some assets or get you a bona fide scorer because you got the young kid, Askarov, and he's waiting. Look how well he's doing in Milwaukee. But the problem you can run into with him is that if you bring him up too soon, you've given away one of the best goalies. Well, not gave him away, but you traded him away, one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League, to bring up a young guy that has immense talent, but you might set him back, a little bit by bringing him up too early.
That's true. I mean, what? Life in sports is all about what ifs, right? You're always taking chances. You're always making educated guesses. But the one thing I would say that Nashville has going their way is they know Saros better than anybody else. They know Askarov better than anybody else. So if they can't be trusted to make the right decision on when is the proper time to bring up Askarov, then no one can. Nobody has more information than the Predators do. So, and the other thing too is, at some point in time, guys, you either have to say Askarov is our guy or he isn't. And I don't see him a lot, but I'll tell you what I do see. I see a team that's won 15 games in a row. I see that he's a very big part of it. If he's not pretty much close to ready, when is he going to be ready? You guys tell me, can he be more ready than this? I mean, so now I will say this. I think earlier in the year, they had some doubts. I do. I think that's also a big part of this. Is Askarov ready? I don't know Askarov at all. I asked somebody about him, and they said he's a goalie. And in hockey speak, that means goalies are well known to be a little bit different. He's young, so he's probably a little bit different. I think they were a little bit unsure. But now, the fact that this conversation is happening says to me that they've watched this guy and they said, we can't keep him there anymore. There's no point. It comes to a point where you're not doing what's best for yourself or the player if you keep him down there. And from everything I'm hearing down there, we're hitting that point with him.
Yeah, and he is only 21. That's a lot to put on a guy. But as you mentioned, Elliot, I do think it's fair to say that his stock has risen since the start of the year. Because I was curious when you said things have changed with Saros, because I think Barry Trotz might sit there and say, well, things haven't. I've been consistent all along. I'll take the phone calls, but you've got to blow me away. He said he was joking with, our Jared Stillman asked Barry Trotz flat out, what about Tom Fitzgerald? They had captain's night. Tom Fitzgerald was here, the first captain, so they had some off-ice things going on just to celebrate all of the former captains, and he was kind of joking. He said, he's going to have to blow me away. He's the guy that needs the goalie. I've got the goalie, right? So he could probably sit there and say, I've been consistent, things haven't changed, but as you mentioned, things are always changing because people's stock are rising and falling. The needs of the other teams are rising and falling, and in this case, there's no question Askarov is impressed a lot of people since the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and you know what, Willie? I it's my personal opinion that things have changed. I can just tell you by the stuff that I'm hearing around the league is that it's gone from, I think Barry Trotz was always taking calls because that's his job, and I think he's right about that. But I do think the will of the Predators, it's still going to be, if they do this, it's going to be a big package. But I just think the will of the Predators to consider it has grown, and I think that is the feeling that is around the league. It's not that it's going to happen, but I think people would have said before it was 99% not going to happen, and I don't think we're at 50-50. I think that's way too much of a swing the other day. But is it 75-25, 80-20? I don't know, but it's more than what it was even a few months ago. That's definitely true.
I heard you talking about this issue on your podcast, And one thing that I guess I hadn't thought of is you can't sign somebody to an extension until the summer. But are you allowed to discuss, to say, what are you looking for in the ballpark of this next contract? We want to keep you here, but we need to know, here's what we're thinking. What are you thinking? Can you have those discussions?
Yes, you can. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to talk to the player. Like, for example, Philadelphia is here right now, and they have a player named Travis Konechny who can be signed on July 1st. And I believe they're talking to him about, okay, we'd love to have you. We just want to know what you're thinking, and we'll tell you what we're thinking. So you are allowed to have those conversations. And I would be surprised if, I don't know how deep they would have gone, but I would be surprised if the Predators and the player didn't already have some ideas.
That is a key part of the equation for sure. I want to ask you just in general, a situation that might pop up during the season like it did the other night. I mean, you guys have mentioned specifically New Jersey being a team that's got a lot of what the Predators might be interested in, and obviously the Predators have exactly what the Devils are interested in. They need a goalie badly. They've got, and we saw the talent on display, they've got a ton of young, really talented players on D, at forward. Even in the minors, they've got some stuff. So they could put together a pretty attractive package to somebody. When you get two people together in the same building, how much different does that make the talks rather than the series of texts and calls and things like that, especially when they know each other?
I think it's a factor. I think it certainly helps. I think also too, I think we're a society that doesn't like phone conversations as much anymore. So it's always better to go talk face to face. Absolutely, I think it can matter. Barry Trotz can say, Tom, this is why I benched you all those times, because you're unreasonable and things like that. I do think it matters. I think FaceTime always matters. Sometimes, as you guys know, in a conversation, you can misinterpret what something that is said. If you're not on Zoom, then you can misinterpret the way someone approaches something. I think FaceTime always helps, always.
What did you make of the change in Columbus this morning? Was that shocking to you?
No, I think we all kind of thought that was going to occur. It was going to happen at some point. I didn't know when. I do think that it's been a really hard year in Columbus. You go back to the aborted hiring of Mike Babcock. I think the statement that ownership put out when that happened was one of those statements that clearly made it very clear how that ownership was upset and disappointed, and that the situation was trouble. And I just think that's what occurred. And then the team had the year they did. If you take a look at it this year, look at all the young players who've been kind of upset. Kent Johnson, David Jurasek, Voronkov almost went back to Russia. And you have to stand up for what you believe in, and you have to do the things that you believe are right. But you also, you can't. If you have one thing that goes sideways like that, you can deal with it. But when you have three or four, it's a real problem. And I just think that the way this season went, and I think Jarmo Kekalainen really knows players. I think he's really good at describing, at defining talent and finding talent, but it just didn't work. And, he'd been there 11 years. You can't argue he didn't get a fair shot, but I think it was just time. And this is one of those situations where it was just time.
Last one from me, Elliot, quickly, going back to the UC Saros conversation. We talk a lot before the trade deadline, but of course moves can still be made over the summer. But what happens to the price if it doesn't happen at the trade deadline? Does the price go down if the Predators wait to move UC Saros till over the summer?
I think that the pressure point changes, Carolyn. The one thing I think about Saros is he's a talent. And when you have a player who is a talent, like that guy is a talent, you're never in a bad spot. But what I think like to me, the price is always determined by how many people want your player, or does somebody decide they want your player really badly? And I think when you have a guy like this, you're always in a good spot because he's talented and people are going to want your player. And I think there's quite a few teams looking for goalies. So that helps you. Where I think the challenge is for Nashville, and this is why I think they're considering this now, is if it gets to July 1st in the summer and either Nashville decides they don't want to sign him, or he, for whatever reason, decides he's going to test the market or not sign right away, that's when the leverage flips towards the player. Because, then the player, like a team is going to say, well, why would I want to trade for Saros if he's just going to walk on me at the end of the year? Right. Like maybe some team would say, yeah, we're willing to take advantage of a UFA, take him while he's a UFA, but it generally drops the price. The leverage really swings to the player at that point. So unless you're willing to let teams talk to him and do an extension, which some teams will do, but again, that also gives the player the choice of where he wants to go to. I guess it's a long way of saying, Carolyn, Saros is a good player, so there will always be interest in him, but the closer it gets to July 1st without an extension, the more the leverage swings to the player.
Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts Podcast and Sportsnet. Elliot, always appreciate your insight and appreciate you for stopping by today. We'll chat next week.
My pleasure, guys. Speak next week.
All right, appreciate it. Elliot Friedman, he is the very best. We'll react to what he had to say coming up next. The Saros situation, what he had to say about Askarov. I thought that was very interesting. Plus, one thing that Barry Trotz mentioned to Jared Stillman earlier this week that was maybe a little bit of a gentle reminder of where we're at with this team. And we'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. But what happens to the price if it doesn't happen at the trade deadline? Does the price go down if the Predators wait to move UC Saros till over the summer?
I think that the pressure point changes, Carolyn. Like the one thing I think about Saros is he's a talent. And when you have a player who is a talent, like that guy is a talent, you're never in a bad spot. But what I think, like to me, the price is always determined by how many people want your player. Or does somebody decide they want your player really badly? And I think when you have a guy like this, you're always in a good spot because he's talented and people are going to want your player. And I think there's quite a few teams looking for goalies. So that helps you. Where I think the challenge is for Nashville, and this is why I think they're considering this now, is if it gets to July 1st in the summer and either Nashville decides they don't want to sign him or he, for whatever reason, decides he's going to test the market or not sign right away, that's when the leverage flips towards the player. Because, then the player, like a team is going to say, well, why would I want to trade for Saros if he's just going to walk on me at the end of the year? Right. Like maybe some team would say, yeah, we're willing to take advantage of a UFA, take him while he's a UFA, but it generally drops the price. The leverage really swings to the player at that point. So unless you're willing to let teams talk to him and do an extension, which some teams will do, but again, that also gives the player the choice of where he wants to go to. I guess it's a long way of saying, Carolyn, Saros is a good player, so there will always be interest in him, but the closer it gets to July 1st without an extension, the more the leverage swings to the player.
Very good. That was Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts Podcast and Sportsnet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. And our studio today is Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Predators taking on the Dallas Stars tonight. A lot of insight there, not just in that clip, but from Elliot, and you can find that on your preferred podcast platform and streaming on all of our socials if you missed the entirety of Elliot Friedman's visit with us there. Overall, and really, we were talking about the break. One thing that I really took away from Elliot was his perceived quote-unquote vibe change, where in the draft, when the draft was here and Barry Trotz said, look, yeah, I was calling around about, hey, could we move up in the draft and Askarov is on the table? That to me says, all right, we are ready to commit to UC Saros if the young goaltender that you viewed as potentially your goaltender of the future is on the trading block. It's kind of flipped. It's a different vibe there from Barry Trotz. That's what
Elliot is stating. I still think if we were to talk to Barry Trotz today, I think he would say I've remained consistent on what I've said about this, and I think that's true. But I do sense that some of these things are just out of Barry Trotz's control. He can have the same mindset every day, but some of the forces around him change a little bit. Are they successfully creating, for example, 2 or 3 teams that might jump into the ring here and say, look, I'd love to have UC Saros for a minimum of 2 playoff runs. And that's what you would get if you're making an offer for him now. You get him for a playoff run this year and all of next year, even if you don't re-sign him. I mean, that might be attractive to a team that's trying to win right now. So that's one thing. That would be something that's different if it's in the summer. Right, so there are things that change, even though your mindset is the same, and that's where I think you have to try to keep that steady course. If you're Barry Trotz, you shouldn't be forced into doing anything. You're in a position of strength right now, as you heard Elliot say. The longer you go, though, more and more leverage goes towards UC Saros, which is why I thought it was interesting his thoughts on you can be talking about ballpark. Parameters of a next contract. I think that's an important thing to communicate on. Is that, hey, look, if we're talking about this, we want you, but we'd love to keep it in this ballpark. What are you thinking? Oh my gosh, you're way out of our range. We're thinking this. That could affect your mindset, right? Askarov's rise, right? He's won 11 in a row, and so his stock is rising. That's something that you might have the same mindset, but this is a change, right? You might feel differently about Askarov than you did a month or 2 ago because he keeps growing. He's moving in the right direction here. So these are just things that go through my mind when we discuss all of this. But I do think it's going to come down to, look, what is the best offer on the table? Does somebody jump all in and just say, wow, that's hard for me to turn down? Mm-hmm. I still think Barry Trotz, and this is something that hasn't changed, I don't think he will make the deal unless it's something that's really, really strong in an offer. And that would be good news for the Predators if somebody blows them away.
But don't you think that what Askarov is doing in Milwaukee, because even though other teams don't know him as well as the Predators do, they're watching.
Sure they are.
They're seeing how good he's playing. So they may think, okay, this kid is playing well. They want to bring him up. So let's make a serious offer for UC Saros, because now we're going to truly see if they want to bring this young guy up or not, or is Barry just really bluffing. I don't think he's bluffing, but you can call him on it. Like, your young phenom is playing great.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I want your guy in the net now. What are you going to do here? Here's the offer, and it may be an offer that Barry hasn't seen yet.
And that is a really good question, is where do the offers go between now and the actual trade deadline, where you get that last kick at the can. Okay, here's my best offer. Take it or leave it. It took. Let's take the greatest trade in Predators history, Philip Forsberg for Martin Erat. That happened at the last minute. It was like David Poyle saying, well, if you want to do this, we'll do it, but we got to have Forsberg. And the Capitals said, yeah. And that was all of a sudden you've got one of your greatest players and your leading goal scorer in franchise history on a last-minute deal. It didn't look like it was going to happen until the very, very end. So there's a lot of twists and turns that can happen between now and March the 8th. Another thing to consider, I'm a little in disagreement with Elliot on the readiness of Askarov. Mm-hmm. I think it's just a lot in his growth curve to just all of a sudden, if they were to do this with Saros, if they got blown away, to hand him the reins and say he's the starter. I still think there's that next stepping stone would be to be alongside of a veteran for a considerable amount of time before you say you're the man. Because I've seen a lot of people take a big step back when given that much responsibility at age 21. There's still, I think, a lot of growing to do. I think we got to be careful, even though he is right now on a absolute run. His numbers, 18-6-1, 2.17 goals against, .921 save percentage at Milwaukee. That's where it's going now, but still, there's a lot of things that can happen that affect a goalie's effectiveness.
But how long can you afford to do that? If you did have the Askarov and Saros, kind of like the Rene Saros model, because you have some needs on this team. Like, you're not a cup contending team right now. You need some offense. You need to find some scoring.
Yeah.
How long can you afford to hold on to two really valuable assets at the same position?
It's a really good question. You have, if you wanted to, I think you could go in, you could sign Saros to an extension in the summer. You would still have Askarov for a full year as a restricted free agent at the end of next year at $925. I think that would be a good stepping stone for Askarov to be the backup next year. And I think he could still grow, get plenty of time between the pipes, and take a big step forward and be that much more ready to be the starter down the road. But then you get into, okay, is Askarov the guy that you're going to want to trade? And do you want to trade him if all of a sudden he continues to grow at the rate he's been growing? So I can see it working, but as you mentioned, where do you then get the elite offensive guys that you're lacking right now, the other pieces that you're missing?
It's great to have two elite goaltenders, but when you can't score goals, it just feels like it feels like you're being gluttonous in goal when you're lacking at so many other positions.
They were in that position.
And it's not easy to find goal scorers.
They were in that position in 2015, the 2015-16 season, when they had Seth Jones and they had Shea Weber, Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm. They were gluttonous in the defense. Seth Jones was playing on the third defense pair, and you're thinking, we got too much. We've got to find a way to get a center. So they flipped Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson, and so that was a calculated risk. And I think it was a good trade, all in all, long term. It wasn't the lights-out superstar, but it was Ryan Johansson gave them good years as a number one center. So you're right. Eventually, something's got to give, right? Eventually, you do have to probably deal from your surplus to grab a weakness.
Predators in action tonight hosting the Dallas Stars. Oh, that was a tough one on Tuesday night. That's a tough one to lose. When UC Saros is playing on his head, and he's saving, 43 of 46 shots, something insane like that, and you still lose a game against the New Jersey Devils on Tuesday, that is a tough one to lose. What do you want to see tonight?
Yeah, I think, number one, the battle level. That was what Andrew Burnett was disappointed with. He said something to the effect of, in the scrum after the game, he said, look, I was disappointed our team didn't look like they wanted to make the playoffs. You've got 5 teams, really, for one spot. That's a heck of a battle. It's going to be a battle every night, and you just want to have that edge, that battle level, look better than it did the other night. Now, New Jersey he did stop and say this a couple of times because he's got a lot of respect for New Jersey. He said that's a really fast team. That team was flying all over the place. But you had the lead going into the third period. If you find a way to get one more goal or 2 more goals, you come out with something there. So that's the other frustrating part of it. So how do you bounce back tonight? I don't know. They've played 3 really good games against the Stars, who are this is an elite team. This is a team that's got the pieces to win the whole thing for sure. And they've done very well matching up with them. We'll see if they can do it again tonight. But I think it starts with the competitiveness, that belief, that edge, and every loose puck along the boards, we got to have it. We can't be the team that is the lesser working team. You've got to be the harder working team.
Do we know who's in net tonight?
Saros will be in net tonight. Okay. Yeah, and remember, Lankinen beat Dallas twice in Dallas here recently. Saros played in the other game where the Predators. This is another example, just like Tuesday. Predators are in position to find a way. You've played well enough to find a way to get a point, get the game to the overtime, and they lose in regulation. Maybe the most glaring, we've said that's happened a few times. Andrew Burnett has said that a bunch of times. We've left some points on the table early in the season and even throughout the season. The most extreme example was the game against Dallas on the 23rd, where they're up 2-1 with less than a minute to go, and they gave up not 1 but 2 goals in a kind of a stunning turnaround to head into Christmas with a lot of coal in the stocking. Yeah, that was tough.
Didn't feel great about that one.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens tonight.
Ali Melnicki, our friend over at Zen Sports, will join us coming up next. Football is over, and I am sad. I know you are sad too, but you can still get in on the betting action with the Superbook, so she will join us coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
This time of year, we reflect on the past and make plans for the year ahead. If you made a resolution to lose weight this year, and you diet and exercise but still struggle to lose the pounds, it could be that you have hormone deficiencies, okay? This is Derek Mason, former NFL wide receiver, All-Pro and Pro Bowler, and you need to call my friends over at Cool Springs MD. Their experienced doctors specialize in identifying which of your hormones need to be balanced and provide a tailored solution designed just for you. Hormone deficiencies can also cause more problems than weight loss, people. You may experience mood swings, fatigue, and a decreased sex drive. Hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, can help. Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and his team understands it's a frustrating cycle and wants to help you be the best you this year. There's no better time now to achieve a healthy lifestyle and be the best you can be. What are you waiting for? Give Cool Springs MD a call today for an appointment. The number is 615-486-3458. That's 615-486-3458. Or visit their website at CoolSpringsMD.com. Don't let imbalanced hormones hinder your resolutions, people. Give Cool Springs MD a call to take control of your health with HRT at Cool Springs MD.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're live out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Predators hosting the Dallas Stars tonight. Puck drop at 7 p.m. Football's over. I'm sad. I know you're sad too, but you can still make some money with Zen Sports. And our friend Ali Melnicki from Zen Sports joins us now. Ali, I know that we are mourning the ending of football season, but maybe what are some of your favorite bets going on right now on the Zen Sportsbook app that some football fans can get in on the action?
Yeah, I'm looking at tonight's NBA slate. The last games before the All-Star break, you have Bucks and Grizzlies. It's a big spread at 12.5 right now in favor of the Bucks. I think the Bucks got this one. The Grizzlies have just been struggling lately, so I know it's a large number to lay on the road, but I'm going to lean the Bucks. And then you got the Warriors taking on the Jazz. We saw the Warriors drop one to the Clippers last night. The Jazz are a little up and coming, so I'm keen to lean at the home team with the Jazz getting a 1.5 at home.
I know a lot of people in our listening area really excited about college hoops. Tennessee has been playing really well. Where have you seen maybe some trends on the college hoop side of things, whether it's games upcoming this weekend or future projections, Final Fours, and potential championship?
Yeah, futures. I was one that was on the UConn bandwagon last year. I had picked them in my March Madness pool to win. They just went on a tear. They covered every single game they had. It's hard to side against them. But I think Tennessee is a really good team, obviously, to look at. We know they've had their March Madness struggles, but I think that they could at least get Elite Eight, maybe even Final Four coverage. So I also like some of the up-and-coming teams of Florida Atlantic. We saw them make a big surprise last year when they made the Final Four. They're ranked currently 24th. They tip off tonight. I take a look at some of those mid-major schools like that team to make another big run in March Madness.
We'll talk with Allie Malnicki is in sports now. Allie, I know this is a little bit further out. You just brought up Milwaukee, and they fired their head coach. Obviously, Doc's in now. What are the odds of them winning the East? If you do,
of the Bucks to win it all.
Yeah,
I got to check that out real quick.
Have they changed? Do you believe they've changed? They've lowered. They've risen. Because Doc's a good coach, but man, oh man, he has a hard time outside of his win with the Boston Celtics. He has a hard time at getting teams back to the championship.
Doc's been everywhere.
Yeah, and we saw what he wasn't able to do with the Clippers.
Looking at what it was before and after, it's pretty much the same. You'll see plus 600, plus 650 somewhere. For me, I think I've said this before, I'm not a huge Doc Rivers fan. The fact that he only has one championship when he had the big three in the Celtics, and he had some great teams when he was with the LA Clippers, when he was with the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't know. I'd hope that Giannis and Lillard are a little different, but I'm still leaning on the Nuggets to go back and repeat.
So who are the odds to win the three-point contest, slam dunk contest? What are the odds looking at?
I'm going Spud Webb. Is Spud Webb going in there? They need to have a throwback dunk contest. Bring all those guys out.
I don't think they can jump now, Willie.
Yeah, I think you got to give credit to McClung. He won it last year. I know he's going against some All-Stars this year, but I'm going to ride him to repeat this year.
I'm just curious, Allie, what kind of action do you see with All-Star games? And we had the NHL All-Star game a couple of weeks ago. We had the Pro Bowl games, and now we've got the NBA All-Star game coming up. Do people really love to bet on those kind of things, or do you see more action on actual games in the regular season?
Yeah, not as much. I think if anything, people lean towards the total. They want to see a lot of points or goals scored, so they kind of go with there. I think it's hard to really see how long each player is going to play, so they tend to stay away from player props. But when it comes to the total, they're all over that.
Allie, one thing we were discussing off air earlier is just the way that when you look at those NBA scores, you're seeing so many really high scoring games. How does that affect how you try to strategize when you get teams scoring in the 120s pretty routinely?
Yeah, it all comes down to our favorite word with the NBA, load management. It depends if your all-stars are playing. If Milwaukee were to sit Giannis and Lillard tonight, that total would look a lot different without their two top scorers. So it's something we as a sportsbook closely monitor every day. We really pay attention to the injury reports because just because one all-star sitting, that could change the line a lot.
What about the NHL side of things? We're at the Predators Arena today. Predators in action tonight against the Dallas Stars. Where are you seeing a lot of money coming in on some NHL futures?
Yeah, obviously the Stars, they're ahead in their division, so everyone's jumping over them. You also have the Florida Panthers. They seem to have come up because they did reach the finals last year. Unfortunately, they did lose. So we're seeing a lot of